Tonight's episode of Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show is brought to you by Kid Products, stick stoves and reflector ovens proudly made in Canada. Algonquin Outfitters, with 5 key locations in and around Algonquin Park to serve your backcountry needs. Salis Marine, keeping you safe on the water since 1999. Ostrom Outdoors, custom fit canoe packs and barrel harnesses. Badger Paddles, handcrafted canoe paddles made to order. And Novacraft Canoes, connecting you with nature in Canadian-made canoes since 1970.
Well, happy Tuesday evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show. My name is Dennis, also known as Canoehound, and if this is your first time tuning in with us this week, well, thank you very much for gracing us with your presence. Hopefully you enjoy the show enough that you'll give us a thumbs up and maybe hit that subscribe button. But more importantly, hopefully you'll stick around for the whole evening because we do have a great guest talking about a great topic and something that I'm really looking forward to. But as usual, we will just get into a couple of announcements while the chat over there fills up. And then we will move on to chatting with tonight's guest. If you missed last week's show, we were joined by Richard Tosh from Tosh Self-Propelled, the YouTube channel. And Tosh and I talked a lot about his recent travels. He's become a bit of a rambling man. He's back in Ontario now and gearing up for the canoe season. In fact, he may be on a canoe trip right now. Lucky guy. But yeah, we had a great evening of conversation talking about some of the adventures that he had down there in the southwest of the U.S. and amongst a bunch of other things. And interesting, there is a little bit of a tie-in between tonight's show and Tosh himself, and we'll get to that in a little while. But yeah, if you happen to miss that episode, please do go back and check it out at your leisure there. It's available in our past episodes playlist. For those of you that might not be familiar, on our website, canoehoundadventures.com, you can also see what last week's episode was right on our homepage because we always post our most recent and our previous video on there. So just an easy way to get to that. Next week on the show, we're going to be featuring Jim Baird. Jim's going to be popping in. We're going to be talking about all the cool things he's got going on. As you know, he has his hands in many pots, and he's got his new live stream or not live stream, but his what's the word I'm looking for there? His podcast, his new podcast, where he's interviewing some really cool people these days. And of course, we'll talk a bit about that, some of the cool adventures he's got going on, and maybe we'll find out a bit of information on how they did with the auction that they had on Instagram. So be sure to tune in next week for that. And then the following week after that, we actually have the boys on from Agawa Gear. We're going to be talking about some exciting things that they have coming down the pipe for us gearheads. And of course, we'll get the whole story on maybe, how they developed the Agawa Boreal saw line, the 21 to 15, I think it is, and the 24. So yeah, we're just going to get to learn a little bit more about them fellas as well. Little shout out here to obviously my channel members. These are the people that help make this channel tick. Every one of these people floating across the bottom, as you know, are great supporters of the channel. Thank you very much to each and every one of you. And if anybody may be interested in becoming a channel member, there is a join button down there somewhere where YouTube keeps moving it around. But yeah, feel free to click on that, and you could figure out exactly how you might want to support the channel if it suits you well. And we do have a couple of channel members who are actually celebrating milestones this week. At 6 months, we have Jeff McCullough and Murphy's Adventures. So congratulations on your 6-month anniversary as being a Canoehound Tripper. And it's greatly appreciated that you're actually supporting the channel. And many of you I've met and actually had the opportunity to thank personally. So that's I feel very warm-hearted about all that stuff. So that's cool. Let's see here. If anybody hasn't actually sent me their email or their contact info, please do. If you're a channel member and you haven't done it, please do send it. I'd love to send you some channel stickers and stuff like that. Just my way of saying thank you very much. So yeah, make sure you take care of that. Also on this week's docket, we have my Buy Me a Coffee friends. We've had a couple of people. We have Steve Bentley, who picked me up a couple of coffees last week there, and Beauty of the Backcountry, who are regular coffee contributors. So let's take a dip, everybody. Dark roast today. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. A few birthday wishes to go out today. One from a past guest who is celebrating her birthday coming up here on the 22nd. That would be Mercedes Rogers. We did a great episode with her a while back there about camping with young ones in the backcountry. They're a family with young children, and they had kids out winter camping like when they were only like 4 months old or something. So that was a really cool episode. Look up Mercedes Rogers on in my past episodes playlist, and you'll come across that. And then of course I'm a grandpa. You all know that, right? I have three grandchildren right now, and the other grandfather to two of my grandkids is celebrating his birthday today. That would be Sean Fox. So Foxy, if you happen to be watching this video, happy birthday to you. And that's your shout out for the day. But hopefully you're not watching. Hopefully you're out with dinner or something like that. But that's a lot of fun too. Anyways, if anybody out there has a special event coming up or something they'd like us to share, please do drop us an email right here at canoehound@gmail.com. That is the magical email address for everything. If you need to get a hold of me in any way, shape, or form, reach out. I will 100% get back to you or reply to your email, or at least read it. And if it doesn't need a reply, it doesn't need a reply. But yeah, so that's the magic one there. And then also we are winding down on the season. We've only got a good handful of episodes left for this particular season. But I do have one more opening. So if anybody has anything really interesting that they'd like to see on the show, by all means, please do reach out to me and let me know what you'd love to see. And if I can make it happen, as you know, I will. If not, it could go on the docket for future episodes. So that there's a little breadcrumb right there. Future episodes, but things are going to be changing a little bit. So yeah, magic email address right there, or yeah, email address. That's the one. Anyways, after 8 o'clock tonight, we do have a swag giveaway. So you'll want to stick around. You'll want to pay attention to what's being said tonight, obviously, because, questions are usually related to our topic and our conversations in the first half of the show. We are going to be giving away let's see here. We got a Portage Pal. I showed this last week. It was donated to me to give away on the show here, and I've actually got one myself. These things are pretty darn cool for carrying around your paddles on a portage, and they sure do make things a lot easier out there. But yeah, we're going to be giving one of them away, as well as a Canoehound Adventures prize pack. So have your ears open and take notes tonight. Yeah, you don't have to take notes, but just know that the question will be answered in the first half somewhere. Anyways, enough of the blurbing. Let's get on to our topic and our guest of the evening, because we got a lot of ground to cover. I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure we have a lot of conversation coming up. Tonight, we're joined by the producer from Good Earth Productions, and they're set to premiere on TVO an original documentary that's titled "Tripping the French River." It's one of like many tripping videos that they put out. Please welcome to the live stream. We have Mitch Azaria. How you doing, Mitch?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Dennis. I'm looking forward to having a nice chat.
Yeah, you know what? This is very interesting to me as a canoe head, as we were saying in the chat there earlier, or in the green room. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But I'm very intrigued. I've got to see a portion of this new video that you've produced, and that's coming out on TVO. Before we get into that, though, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe about Good Earth Productions.
Sure, I'd love to. So I started off, like you, I'm a grandfather, so congratulations. I started off a long time ago. It was color television, but barely. But I started off as a sports reporter. I was a sports reporter on Global on a program called Sportsline. That was the first half-hour sports show. Jim Taddy, Mark Hepsher.
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember it?
I do remember that. Yeah, I am that old. Yep.
And they were great, right? I mean, these guys they were so entertaining, you know, Mark in particular, and I was the fill-in anchor guy and the full-time reporter with another guy named Bill Bird. So we were the four of us were on that for quite a while. Anyway, then I left there, went to TSN for a while, and produced Dave Hodge, who's kind of infamous as the pencil thrower on Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah.
And then he came over to TSN, and I produced a daily show with him. And then we started Good Earth Productions in the early 90s, 93, 94. And our first series was for Discovery Channel called Great Canadian Parks. And it was, you know, for its day, it was a, you know, fairly successful show. Peter Truman, who was my boss a long, long time ago at Global when I was on the news side, was our host. And he was a, you know, a guy of great integrity, a great journalist, a guy who insisted on coming to every one of the parks that we went to. We went to 70 parks, and some of them, you know, quite remote and quite rugged to get into. And he was in his mid 60s at that point, and he, you know, he insisted he wanted to be. He believed that if he was going to report on something and be part of a documentary, he needed to be there. He couldn't just, you know, mail it in. And then we did a Great Canadian Rivers series, and then we've been doing this immersive tripping series for 5 years.
That's very cool. So you've got a long storied history in front of and behind the camera, basically.
Storied is right.
Yeah. That's cool. You know what? When I seen your interview with Kevin there, his Whiskey Fireside Chat, I was looking at you and I'm thinking, man, that guy looks so familiar. And that's probably where I remember you from, where it was them days on Sportsline and stuff like that. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, maybe fuller hair and yeah. Yeah. Well, those were the days.
We've all grown old gracefully, haven't we?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But those were the days. I mean, I was there when, you know, when the Leaf greats were Wendell Clark and Russ Courtnall and Al Iafrate and
Gary Lehman.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, they were pretty good teams, but they were still Harold Ballard teams, so they were, you know, there was a bit of a mess.
Yeah, and that Harold Ballard curse is still floating over that team somehow. It's just there.
Oh, he chased me at least twice down a hallway with his cane. At least twice. He was just an ornery, I don't know. But, you know, obviously he must have been a pretty good businessman, because, you know, he ended up owning a storied franchise.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure he never caught you. I can't see him being faster than you.
He probably could today, but back then I was pretty quick.
Oh, that's funny. Well, that's cool. So now you started Good Earth Productions. Probably nothing to do with TSN and Global and such anymore. Just your business now is basically producing films and documentaries.
Yeah. So what happened was, you know, Discovery Channel, this was the start of all the specialized channels, right? There was no such thing. And Discovery was one of the first ones. And it was in the US, but then Canada got a license to do it. And I kind of knew they needed programming. And I was a little underemployed at the time, and my wife was a little underemployed. We had just bought a house, we had just had a baby, and we were fairly desperate. So I was doing a bunch of, you know, gig jobs, but I kept, you know, thinking you know, if I could get a series on a channel, which, you know, is a pipe dream in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I pitched this series, you know, which was a natural, because national parks in Canada, what better, you know, two things to go together. And then Discovery at that point was doing a lot of, you know, nature. They don't anymore, but they were then. And we were fortunate enough that they really liked the concept. And they liked it so much that they offered it to 4 other production companies. And they said, of the 5 documentaries that get made, we're going to air them on consecutive Sundays. And the one that gets the best response and gets the best audience, and we're going to take phone calls and see what people like, you know, we'll award the series to that production company. And as it happened, I was at my brother-in-law's and sister-in-law's to watch our debut on the Sunday. And it started at about 9 o'clock at night, and it came on. And by 9:15, both my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were fast asleep. And I thought, you know, we're dead. I mean, like,
right.
My family can't even stay awake to watch. There's no way we're going to get the series, but we ended up getting, and I think it was because Peter Truman had so much cachet and so much integrity, and that launched us. That was our big break.
That's cool. What was the first tripping series video that you put out, which
The
was?
first, the first one we did, and we shot it long before the pandemic was even thought to be, something. I mean, as you know, before the pandemic, who would have ever
Yeah.
thought, right? And we shot it on the Rideau Canal, and we knew the Rideau Canal was a pretty special place. And then, as it happened, when it came out, because these things take a long time, we were sort of, in the middle of the pandemic, and it was 4 hours instead of three, and people really took to it because in a lot of ways they got a little sort of vacation. They got because it is immersive. You do get the feeling that you're on this trip. So it really worked out. And then we thought after that, maybe the next one to the next one after the pandemic wouldn't hold audiences, but for some reason, and I don't pretend to understand, people continue to watch it, which we're so thankful for.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of funny because I'm kind of in the same boat as you, because this show, just as a live stream, right, had gained a lot of popularity during COVID. Everybody was wanting to talk about and listen about what the government wouldn't let us do anymore. What do you mean you can't go into backcountry? What do you mean you can't go into backcountry? Safest place to be, right? So everybody kind of, and I have, like, I'm looking at my list of people in the chat right now that have been following me ever since way back then. You know what I mean? And it's just because we all have this passionate love, and you got something there that you're playing on the things that people really enjoy, at least in this community, right? So.
Well, and you and like us, we were able to, to be a distraction in a time that was really troubled, and a nice healthy distraction, right? Because that's where you, like you said, you want it to be, front country, back country, just be out of doors, right? And
Right.
I took a lot of comfort in that, and I'm sure you did, too.
Oh yeah, well, it was a relief, or it was a reliever for me too, right? I got to meet some great people in the community that I follow as well. So yeah, it kind of one hand fed the other type of deal. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the
that's
best
cool.
of worlds.
Yeah. So besides doing these tripping, it's okay for me to call them a series, right? Because basically,
Absolutely, yeah.
are you much of an outdoorsman
Well,
to, like, besides what you do when you're shooting these films?
yeah, I kind of am, and I'm not. Like, I started when I was a kid. My dad had a fishing and hunting club outside of Montreal. In fact, he was the first guy he brought bison in from Alberta to
Mhm.
Quebec, and he had 100 or so white-tailed deer, and we had trout fishing. So I sort of grew up hunting and fishing, and loved it. And then, like all things, when I got older, I couldn't really either have the time or couldn't afford to do much. And then when we got this first series, Great Canadian Parks, we were on such a shoestring that I was directing a lot of them out in the field, and same with Great Canadian Rivers. And between the rivers and the parks, we did 70 parks and 40 rivers. So I got out a lot, but because we were filming, we were often, well, not often, we were, yeah, almost entirely led by guides and people that would, because we had to spend so much of our time concentrating on the filming part. To do both would have been impossible, and also it wouldn't have been smart, right? So I love the out of doors, but I'm not I'm not an outdoorsman.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Yeah, that's I'd imagine it'd be hard to find time too when you are shooting, because your summers are probably taken up shooting these series, right? That when you should be out there playing like we are. But
Exactly.
you kind of are. You kind of are. So yeah, it's okay, cool.
Yeah, but often,
So
often we'll see people who are, who are on a canoe trip or are, on a hike, and it's like, when you're, when you're going down a city street and you see somebody cycling or something, or about you kind of wish you were doing what they were doing and not what you were doing, but so yeah, I mean, it's right, it's a timing issue, isn't it?
sure, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I I know I work in the summer. I'd rather be out there paddling than I want to do what Richard Tosh is doing this week, and he's out paddling. So yeah. So trip in the French River. Tell us about this documentary and what people can expect from the episode.
Yeah, so it's 3 hours, which is, that's pretty unusual. There's no commercials. It's TVO, so they're a public broadcaster, which is why this works so particularly well. So there's no interruptions. There's no music, no narration. And if we've done our job really well, the viewer is sitting in the bow of a canoe, and they're paddling down, the French River from top to bottom. And obviously, we're condensing a trip that would take a lot more than 3 hours. But you get the sense that that you are paddling. And then, like most things, if it was just the scenery, it would be interesting enough. That would be kind of cool. But what we also add is 125 information boards, and these information boards are, well, you would remember the Much Music stuff, right? Remember the little pop-up, board, right? It's like, it pops up and it gives you like a little trivial fact, right, about what you're seeing. And some of it is sort of conversational in that, when you're paddling, you're going to refer to a particular tree or a watermark or something, and you're going to ask your friend about it and that kind of. So some of it's that, and then some of it, is historic information and that kind of thing. And then in addition to that, every now and then when you're paddling, through 3D, we take you into, another world. And it's usually a natural history world, following a beaver, or a historic world where all of a sudden, you're paddling and in front of you is this alligator boat, towing, tens of thousands of logs, and you're lost in this, and you're thinking, what the heck? And then we bring you back out onto the water and you're paddling a little more. So it's an enriched, immersive trip on the French River.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found the pop-ups give you, because you have some time in between most of them, unless it's like carrying on that little pop-up conversation. It gives you time to think about it and ponder over that with a nice relaxing background. In the case of this river. So
yeah, it's so nice to hear that, because John Morrison and I, our director, we spend so much time, because in a usual program that's half an hour or an hour has so many different cuts and so many different scenes. When you're rolling back in the edit suite to look at an edit or to look at where something is placed, you might roll back 30 seconds. For us, we're rolling back 10 minutes to see how that pacing works. And if we do get it right, which we always hope we do, it's just when you think, okay, I'm kind of getting ready for something new, we hope that that's when we bring up a little information board, or that's when we bring in a 3D animation to take you somewhere else, right? So it is so much about pacing, because 3 hours is it's a massive animal.
It is too. And a lot of your scenes are long running scenes that it wouldn't do justice if you just did the short, choppy, like video type of things, because that area is so enriched with beauty that you want to capture it all, and you have like a lot, and I do mean a lot of drone footage, which captures a whole new realm of the beauty of the area, because if you're on the water, you don't see from up there, right?
That's really interesting, because you're right. We've used more drone in this program than we did in any of the others. And part of it was because of that, right? Is that if you're on a river, you never really get to, get up in the air and kind of see where you are amongst, the rest of the landscape. So it's interesting that you picked up on that, because we used far more drone than we've ever done. But, and I've talked about this before, shooting those 15-minute drone scenes is really, really tough. Traditionally, when you get drones up in the air, it's a 2-system or 3-person crew. You all have a set of goggles. The director has a set. The pilot has a set, and then the DOP, the director of photography, has a set. And you're working in this dance. So the director is saying, okay, crab a little to the left, come down a little bit, and then the pilot's doing that, and then at the same time, the DOP's moving the camera on the drone. And it's really difficult. We tried to do that when we did the Niagara program, to get these 10 or 15 minute long shots. But as you know, when 3 people are dancing together, someone's going to take a misstep, right?
Yeah, somebody's stepping on somebody's toes, right?
Yeah. If you're dancing on your own, you might. So we've got a guy, Peter Warren, he's both a pilot and he's been a director of photography for 40 years. So he kind of does it, you know, so naturally, and he can get those long scenes because when you're out there and you know, trying to stay concentrating on something for 15 minutes without even the slightest little hiccup, it's really, really challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It takes some skill and some good equipment, I'd imagine, too, right?
Yeah, yeah. And these drones are, I mean, you see winds where, you know, everything's moving, and even the drone in the air will be moving this much, and the shot is rock steady. And to think that in the old days we used to hang out of helicopters with a seatbelt on, with a like when I think about all those, you know, like literally hundreds of hours that I spent in a helicopter with the cameraman. He's literally got his seatbelt on that we've gaffer taped, and we've got the door off, and he's out, you know, leaning out the window, you know, getting the shot with no stabilization whatsoever. So they were great shots, but the technology today is just ridiculous.
Yeah, what I thought was neat, I checked out your Twitter posts, or some posts to the TVO X, sorry, not Twitter, X, and they showed some like little behind the scene things there, and showing one just on the drone footage, another one was you know, you can see the boom on you guys are on the boat, and you got the big boom and stuff like that. And it was really neat because I was actually putting that together with some of the shots that I watched, and because I did have a bit of access to see some of the footage, but it was really cool to see that's how they did that. You know, it's amazing what you can do with one of those big boom arm type of things. I don't know what they're called, but
jigs. Yeah. I love that behind the scenes stuff. They used to do that with films, right? They would have the director and maybe, you know, the cinematographer on feature films where you get the bonus, you know, track, and you can watch the whole film, but just listen to the two of them, how they set up each shot, not maybe every shot, and I always found it so fascinating because when I watch something, I'm always thinking, I'm not listening to the story as much as I'm trying to figure out how they got the shot, you know? So I love behind the scenes stuff. So we figured people would like that too, right? So, I don't think it's pulling back the curtain too far. I think, what the heck, right? Like, you know, I think it's more fascinating than giving away anything, you know?
Sure. So now with this with this documentary, you cover the entire French River. Where do you actually start, and where do you finish, say, within this 3-hour period?
Yeah, so we came in, you know, at the top through Canoe Pass, you know, off Lake Nipissing, and then we end, you know, in Georgian Bay, Voyageur Channel down through, and we literally pop out, you know, in Georgian Bay. So it's 110 kilometers. I mean, they say that, you know, the voyageurs would do it in a day, which is fairly hard to believe, but, you know, you know, they were also on the clock, weren't they? So.
Yeah. And several in a canoe too. So.
Yeah. And then we actually, you know, picked our route, and we sort of paddled the entire, you know, river, but we only used, you know, the portions that we thought were, you know, reflective of the entire river. Because as you know, it's a river with, I think, 3 personalities at least. So we wanted to make sure, you know, we captured each one of the 3. But there were so many scenes that we thought, oh, like, you know, I mean, stuff on the floor was almost as good as the stuff on, you know, on the air.
Yeah, it's actually a gorgeous river. Like, I can be honest with you, I've never paddled the French River. Always wanted to, and now I'm more inspired to go and do it. Right, just to say, hey, I seen that. No, but it's really about getting out there and taking it in, because it's not 100% wilderness, that river, is it? There's a lot of cottages. There's even farmland when you get more towards Highway 69 400 there, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you know, I mean, what's cool about it is that it's so accessible, right? So, which is, you know, for a lot of folks, that's a big deal, and you can make it feel, as you know, as remote or as, you know, as busy as you want, because there's lots of channels that, you know, that are you know, that are quiet. But, you know, yeah, the top in particular is fairly busy. There's, you know, there's a number of lodges. I found the lower third, you know, from Eagle's Nest down, just not only, well, it's a little harder to get to, but I also found it the most picturesque. And I love, some of those, narrow, channels where, you literally can touch both sides, that it's, beautifully, faced up off the shore. I think more opportunity to see wildlife. Yeah, that particular part was some of my favorite.
Well, what was the motivation to do the French River? Like, okay, I'm just going to go through a quick list of what you've done. You've done tripping to Bruce, you've done tripping to Rideau Canal, tripping to Niagara River, tripping train 185, which is actually one of my favorites. I mentioned I've been on the butt train like four times, right? And now tripping to French River. What was the motivation behind doing the French River over another river or another water system?
Yeah, well, we knew we wanted to do a paddle, right? We hadn't done one yet, and I always say, every Canadian believes that there's two things they can do: hold a hockey stick and hold a a paddle. So we knew we wanted to do a paddle, and then we talked. We talked about this earlier. I talked to Kevin a lot about it, right? And I said, okay, well, in Ontario, what's a river? We have two things to consider. One is a river that has enough variety in it that we can. Because some rivers are absolutely gorgeous, but it's a lot of the same landscape, right? So we wanted a river that had a lot of changes, also had sort of an interesting beginning and particularly a big end, right? We want to have a sweeping big end, and we wanted one that was full of stories. So when we started to look at the different rivers that were put up as candidates, the French just became, more and more, a fascinating place. I mean, because of, the Aboriginal history, the European history, explorers, voyageurs, logging, tourism, the lodges, fishing. Like it's got all of that to talk about. And for us, if we can't do those information boards, if we're on a river where the only thing we can talk about is the natural history of it, at a certain point, I think, over 3 hours, that starts to get a little thin. So this one had all of that, and then it had the additional that it was accessible for us as a crew, because logistics are, I've done shoots up on Ellesmere Island and the Firth River and in the Yukon and and some of that stuff. It was hard enough to do half hours up there. To do 3 hours and get the kind of weather we need to sort of make this main character, which is the river, look its best. It just, on our kind of budget, would just be unaffordable.
Yeah. I guess the accessibility would be a key thing. How many guys or people did you have on crew for this? Did you have a fairly large crew?
No, our crew was tight. We had we usually had a local guide with us. We had our director of photography who could do both drone and operate the main camera. We had our director John, and then at times when we were doing the fast water, we would also have Richard Tosh, who I can't say enough about Richard. Not just as a guy to hang out with and spend time with and tell stories with, but just such a capable guy. So that we're a tight little crew, right? We're TV Ontario. We're not a big budget production. We're a small sort of documentary crew, and everybody does everything, right? I mean, at any point somebody else can sort of jump in and help the other guy out.
Yeah, for sure. So how the planning stages for this entire thing? Like there's obviously a lot of research that you have to do so that all your facts are complete.
Yeah.
And correct. How long was this in the works? How long did it take from like concept to launch on April 21st?
Almost a year. And there's as you said, it's sort of a, measure twice, cut once kind of deal, right? Like you really want to be prepared, because once you're out there, the meter's on and the meter's ticking over pretty fast, right? Because, there's costs in paying the crew, obviously, in, lodging and food and all those kinds of things. So you really want to be really well prepared. But the thing that you can never count on is the weather. And for us, the weather is critical. In a documentary, in a more traditional documentary, you might exploit the bad weather, and that's part of the trip. because for what we do, we really need, ideal weather. So, there were times where we sort of stood around and paced and waited for the weather to get better. But on the research side, that's really critical for us. And we had a really great researcher, Susan Hancock, who lives just across from Ottawa. And she, her task was not only to do the research, but to find those little aha boards. The one, I mean, I can talk about all kinds of, but one of my favorite ones is that, during the whole beaver craze and with the making of the fur hats and everything, in the UK, they were using this nitrate mercury to, in the factories to make the hats, and people were getting neurological issues, and that's where the expression "mad as a hatter" came from. Like I love that stuff. It's a 2-part board. It talks about the production of the hats, and then it says that neurological issues created that phrase "mad as a hatter." So it's like just little pieces of trippy. You have to dig deep to find those little ones, and they have to pass the aha moment. If they're not like a really cool fact, they don't make the cut.
Right. Yeah. And you said there's 125. Was there something like 125 different?
125. Yeah. And yeah, it's a slog to get those done, but it's also fun because I love Canadian history, and I love Canadian natural history. I love Canadian human history. So for me, I could show you the stack that I have back here of books, like this deep, just even, the canoe, right? The canoe is like one of the most, you could almost, I could have done probably 40 pop-up facts about the canoe that I just thought, one of them I remember reading where, in the 90s, they sent these supercomputers out to try and, better the design of the canoe. And, this was sort of a gift to us by Aboriginal people thousands of years ago. And they realized you can't design anything better than the design of a canoe. It's this perfect craft, right? I thought that's just incredibly fascinating,
Yeah. No, I got a kick out of Kevin Callan's interview with you the other day, because you were talking about the canoe and you kind of toiled over which canoe you wanted to use because you wanted it to fit the video. And he said he was so glad that you didn't use like an old Canadian Tire or Coleman Special or something like that, right? What did you actually use for the canoe?
Yeah, it was a Prospector, and it was cedar strip. It was a beauty. It was a little on the heavy side for sure, but it's kind of the star of the program, right? Like the paddlers are almost anonymous because the canoe is just, the canoe in the setting is quite beautiful, and it was almost like we cast the canoe, the canoe had to look good against the scenery. So, but yeah, it was a very heavy canoe.
And it had to be a red canoe too.
And it had to be
yeah. It had to be a red canoe. Yeah.
Could it have been another color? I don't know.
No, well, no, it has to be red. No, for a heritage river like that, it has to be red. That's my opinion.
All right. Well,
unless it's actually birch bark, but
and we considered that, right? But yeah, that would have been
Yeah. Who were the two paddlers in the canoe?
Well, they were two people from. So what had happened was, I think the second day we were up there, one of the guides that had us out, he was a fishing guide because we were using fishing guides and big sort of boats to get around, and he was just a fascinating guy, and I kept talking to him, and I at a certain point I thought, this guy could be our paddler, so, and then he tells me that his wife's an avid paddler, and right away I'm interested, So I said, okay, well, maybe we should talk about it, and I should meet your wife and stuff. And the two of them together, when we finally, got them together, they were just so perfect together. They bickered a little bit, but they also had like all kinds of cool information. They were from Lake Nipissing, so they and he guided the river. I mean, this guy, I can't tell you how many times we were paddling and he would just want to stop and go fishing. Like, he's just a fanatical fisherman. Everything he talked about, everything he thought about, every piece of water he passed. But they ended up being, really, really great and really patient with us. They understood that, it takes way more time. It's the usual stuff, right? It's, hurry up and wait all the time. So they got to learn all of our expressions, and yeah, they're a really, really great couple, really great local couple.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how you actually had a little bit of their conversation from time to time in there too. Like just nothing overpowering, but just enough to show that there are really people out there.
Yeah, well, someone recommended that we get, like a Ron James or like a paddler with a, with a big name and personality and stuff. But that's not the program. The program is that you who are watching it are at the, in the bow, right? So if those people are too, they take up too much of the air, then you're not going to feel like it's your trip, right? So we try to keep it somewhat anonymous, but there are times when it's natural that they should say something about what they're seeing or what they're experiencing.
Sure. Now, you and the crew, were you traveling by canoe down the river as well?
No.
No, you cheated, man.
Did I say no? I haven't. Roll back the tape. Of course we were.
Of course we were.
we couldn't be just because of gear, right? Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how many days were you actually on the river then, filming?
I think altogether, including the winter scenes and the autumn scenes and everything, and some straight drone days, probably 17 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And over 4 different trips.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It takes a long time. I never thought about how many hours, right, to get to 3 hours. Like, how many hours did we shoot to get to 3? I mean, I don't think it was a crazy ratio, but yeah, it's a multiple for sure.
Well, you guys are professionals. You know how to get the shots, right? Whereas me, I'd have to get I'd have to get so much footage to get that much, where you guys get that much to get that much, right? So yeah.
I don't know. I loved your opening. I thought your opening was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's that was a long work in progress. But anyways,
well done. I thought it was really well done.
Thank you. So along this this journey, was there anything that you guys or yourself that you really caught you by surprise, that you weren't expecting, that was like something amazing or something not so amazing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that lots of things caught me by surprise. One of which was how many people were out there just giving it, like that you could tell maybe this was their first time, in a canoe, maybe for their first time paddling, but they were out there, and they were enjoying themselves. They didn't have the best of gear, and they were, renting, their canoe and their paddles, but they were just being out, outdoors, and just, enjoying the river. And you can kind of get away with it out there, right? That sort of came as a bit of a surprise to me. The history, I've talked about it before, when we saddled up to those pictographs, there was this moment where, the whole crew went silent, and just kind of, you could just think, and we were with Bill Commanda, a local guide, that we were all just lost in our own thoughts, thinking about, what would it have been like, when these were, were put on the stone. And then I always think I always liked the idea of the hand that shook the hand, like that you're in, you're touching history. And I couldn't help but think, because I had read, as I do every time I go somewhere, I try and read so much of the history to understand that 3,000 years ago, there were settlements at the top of the river, and to know that, that people had been using this river for, for millennia. And it's the same water, it's like when we went through Canoe Pass, there's been, probably people going through that, that same pass, which, okay, maybe parts of it have been logged, but that was 150 years ago. So, to a degree, some of that has come back. But to think that they were seeing what I'm seeing, that it hasn't changed that much. So those kinds of things I love, and it's particularly. I remember John Grisham told a story one time. He was really hurried to get to this gorge in Nepal, and he was, he had a lot of things going on. He was writing books and stuff, and he ran out there, and his guide is, pointing to him, and he's trying to explain, why this is such a significant place. Years later, Grisham read about it and understood how deeply important and beautiful this place was. And he said, one day I'm going to have to go there and see it, And that's, I find when I'm going somewhere, I've researched the heck out of it. When I finally get there, I've got this great feeling. And then, you know, I mean, we don't get to see, we get to see a bit of the lodges, but to get inside of the lodges as a crew and spend time with the people that really are, you know, protectors and take care of the river. I really love that. You know, I thought some of those lodges were just complete throwbacks. I talked a lot about Bear's Den, and we did a little story on Bear's Den and the family that runs that. I mean, that's just a, like, I said it in the video that we made. Like, if I close my eyes and imagine what a lodge is supposed to look like, this is it. You know,
That
like,
was it.
all over. You know,
Yeah.
hardcore fishing. You know, and then a family that are like, you know, you're eating, you know, family style meals. You know, Joe, the husband's cooking in the kitchen. It's, I love that stuff. To me, that's kind of what makes, you know, Ontario and Canada so great.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I guess part of your job there is meeting these people, because I'd imagine you had a lot of opportunity to do that, because I noticed in the pre-screening how there were certain scenes, and one that really stands out to me is one pretty early on in the video where you're paddling along, and then there's a lodge or a cabin on the right hand side, and there's a silver boat waiting there, and you can tell they're kind of just waiting for you and the drone shot or whatever the shot was to go by, right? So
Yeah.
there's got to be a lot of communication with people in certain areas as to, hey, we're a film crew, we're doing this, can you do this at this time? Is that the situation?
Yeah, it's funny, you know, the scene that you're talking about was we were staying at a lodge, and we zipped out of the lodge to go down the river. And then I sort of turned around and I thought, that's such a cool scene. Everybody's kind of coming out of the lodge. It's first thing in the morning. The gulls are really active. Let's go and, you know, shoot that scene. And we went and shot it. And we were like, it's just such, it looked like it was choreographed, but it was like, it was an absolutely, just, yeah, just a scene that kind of worked. And I think one of the guys actually had a fish on when we went by, you know, and one of the guys that was fishing was Sil Apps, who, you know, played for the Leafs for years.
Yeah.
And he takes his family and has been taking his family there for 30 or 40 years. And, you know, as you know, at these lodges, they have, you know, the board that lists all the, you know, all the fish and who's got the biggest one by day and, you know, by season and stuff. And he was prominent, and you could just tell how much he loved that river.
That's cool. That is very cool. Well, yeah. So I got a couple questions here in the chat. One is, I got to pull it up here because it was a question that I actually have on my my little scribble notes here.
Yeah.
It's from Jeff McCullough asking, what was the biggest challenge you faced while making your way down the river?
Trying to film the whitewater, you know, or trying to film the fast water. And that's, you know, we talked about Richard Tosh, right? So what our, you know, still waters, you know, fairly, you know, we could get that figured out. And what we were trying to do was we were trying to get the fast water shot in a way that you would get the sensation of being in it, but you wouldn't get this, you know, sort of nauseated kind of, you know, yeah. I mean, part of what we do is once we kind of get you in the tent, we want to keep you in the tent, and anything that kind of is really distracting would give you a, you know, maybe an opportunity to hit the remote. When, you know, you said it, I think at some point that you're kind of in a bit of a trance, right? So we want to keep people in that, and how to keep them in that fast water. So somebody told me about Richard, and we needed somebody who was really capable that could, you know, that could paddle us through that water. And I phoned him up, and, you know, he's not a guy that, you know, he uses every word really, you know, but, you know, every word is precious, right? He doesn't say a lot, right? And we had talked to a guy on the river about paddling down. He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "I could stand in the canoe and, you know, go through the fast water." And we were going, yeah, like all bravado. And we're thinking, yeah, I don't think this guy can really do it. And I talked to Richard, and I said, you know, I had watched his video on the French, and I said, these are the pieces of water that we wanted to go through. Do you think you could, you know, get a cinematographer and a camera on the front of your canoe through it? And he, you know, he just said, yeah, I can do that. And that was it. Like he didn't say anything more. He didn't try and back it up in any way. He didn't try and give me all the reasons why. He just said, yeah, I could do that. And I just thought, that's a very capable, you know, this, like, he just seems so capable in those 4 words, you know. And then he showed up, and, you know, once you're around him for 10 minutes, you realize, you know, this guy will never tell you something he can't do, and he's going to make sure that, you know, he does it properly, and, you know, and gets us through it all. And so that was, you know, that was the great challenge. And we found the right camera that could fit onto the front of the canoe, that our cinematographer could, you know, could operate, and that, you know, we felt if we did happen to go for a swim, it would be, you know, something that we could replace with it. It was an expensive piece of camera, but not like, you know, break the production.
Excuse me, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Bit of tickle going on. So that canoe, was it a rental, or was it somebody? Did you actually like drill holes into that beautiful canoe?
Yeah. No, that it was, but the canoe that did all the fast waters was Richard's canoe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we had the camera sort of set at the front, so, you know, you're just seeing the point of view, right? You don't, you know, it actually. So even though it's cut into it, you think you're in the red canoe. You know, it's that old, you know, you were in Richard's canoe, and we used Richard's just because he was so comfortable, you know, in his own craft.
Yeah, and he loves whitewater too. He's a self-proclaimed whitewater junkie when it comes to whitewater. He really enjoys that. That's cool.
It's funny that you said that, because when we finished the scene, he was like, it was almost like he was giggling, and we thought, well, this guy must be so used to doing this kind of water, right? But I think he's one of those guys that just loves it, right? It doesn't matter how many times he does it, or, you know, he just loves it.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you didn't actually paddle the river with this, but did you have opportunities to paddle on the French?
Yeah. The director, John, and I, when we would break for the day, and it was usually at a reasonable hour because we were always trying to work, you know, at a fairly high light, we would just go paddling, either paddling or hiking, right? Because, I mean, A, you've got all this sort of, you know, pent up energy, and B, you know, it's like watching a hockey game. You want to go play hockey afterwards, right? You know, like anything that you like to do, if you have to watch it, you want to go and do it afterwards, right? So yeah, I mean, you know, we wouldn't get in more than a couple hours, but, you know, we'd poke around and, you know, and you know, get to know the river a little better, and in a sense do some scouting for, you know, for the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. You also mentioned earlier too that the river's diversely broken up into like 3 different sections, and then you covered different seasons as well throughout the video. Let's talk about the 3 different sections and the differences between them, and, like, you know, your thoughts on it. What were your favorites?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when we started, because we figured let's do it in top to bottom, right? It just seemed to make sense. Why put it out of order? That first day, I still remember going up the main channel. We were going up in a fairly large boat. We were sort of meant to just scout because it was a cloudy day. And I remember going up and thinking, you know what? I don't think this is going to work. It's too big a river. You know, it feels more like a lake. And, you know, for our programs to really work, you have to kind of have 2, you know, if you have one shoreline, it's okay. But if you have sight of both shorelines, it really works. And, you know, there were parts, and I don't know, you know, in terms of measurement, how far across it is at the top, but it's a long way, you know. And I thought this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And then we got sort of, you know, to the lake, and then started coming down what would have been, you know, the paddle routes. And then all of a sudden I went, okay, yeah, this is really nice. And then, you know, once you're off the main channel, it's quite, you know, it's quite beautiful, and way more peaceful. You don't get the, you know, the boat traffic and so forth. And then the middle section, you know, tends to be where, you know, where most of the fast water is. And that's, you know, that's a variety of different channels. And then my favorite part, you know, as we talked about earlier, is the bottom. I just loved, I loved from, you know, Eagle's Nest, which is the highest point on the river. I can't remember exactly. It's, you know, 180 feet high, I think. From there down on the old Voyageur channel, you get that it's sort of like a mixture of those Georgian Bay kind of whalebacks combined with very shallow clear water, just and lots of softwoods, and I just found that part the most stunning. And there was some great fast water there. I mean, Richard Tosh. I mean, the scenes in the dock towards the end where it's coming through Devil's Door, and Richard had scouted it, knew that it was going to really pull him over to the left. And I mean, I don't know if it was because he had done it on his own and now he had Peter Warren in the front, and Peter, he's not helping at all. He's just, working the camera. And I mean, part of it is the lens, but it looks like they were kissing off the wall. I mean, it looked like they were in real trouble, but Richard's never really in trouble, but it's a really dramatic scene, the way he got out of that fast piece of water.
Were all the fast water portions, were they one takers, or did you?
It's Richard. Of course, they were one take.
Of course they were. Maybe we should get him on. He's in the chat. I seen him in the chat a little while ago.
Of course they were. You know what was really disappointing at one point? I think it was the first day we worked with Richard. They went and did three. Like, what would happen is we would get to a certain point where John and I would have to just get out and let Richard and Peter go off on their own, because it was just, we couldn't get more than one canoe going through. And they would go for, 3 or 4 hours and then radio us. And then, we'd find a way to come kind of meet up with them. And they shot 4 hours of gorgeous footage. They were like high-fiving. We got this great stuff, blah, blah, blah. And we screened it out in the field. It looked terrific. And then we got back to the lodge and we started to screen it for real. And there was an error through the entire thing. Like, the camera had lost one of its gyros and it was just tilted, and it had this weird line that we couldn't see. It was subtle, but it was there. And all 4 hours were unusable.
Wow. Oh, darn, we got to do it again. Eh?
That wasn't Richard's fault, but yeah. We did a few things a few times. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Mitch, I'm just going to take our quick little sponsor break here, and then come back with our giveaway, and then we'll get back into some more chat. And I'd love to maybe get a little more information on tripping the French River, but also maybe a little bit about some of your other documentaries that you've done, the tripping series, because maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with them. Maybe we'll get some more watch time there too.
Okay, sure. I'd love to talk about those.
That's great. Okay, we'll see you in a few short moments then.
There's nothing like being out there. For over 50 years, we've been connecting people with nature by building classic Canadian canoe designs using the best materials available. We built a reputation on durable, dependable canoes that allow you to focus on what's important, whether that's unplugging in remote wilderness, spending quality time with your favorite people, or nailing the perfect line. Visit novacraft.com to find the perfect canoe for you and locate your nearest authorized dealer.
Tonight's episode of Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show is brought to you by Kid Products, stick stoves and reflector ovens proudly made in Canada. Algonquin Outfitters, with 5 key locations in and around Algonquin Park to serve your backcountry needs. Salis Marine, keeping you safe on the water since 1999. Ostrom Outdoors, custom fit canoe packs and barrel harnesses. Badger Paddles, handcrafted canoe paddles made to order. And Novacraft Canoes, connecting you with nature in Canadian-made canoes since 1970.
And welcome back to the second half of Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show, featuring Mitch Azaria talking about tripping the French River. documentary that's set to launch in a couple of days. We'll say April 21st. Anyways, we do have a quick giveaway to do tonight. We are going to be giving away Santa Miloshchuk is giving away some channel memberships. So get on that, people. We're going to be giving away a portage paddle, which is a neat little contraption here that you can actually utilize to carry your paddles around and your fishing poles when you're doing a portage in the backcountry. Very cool device here, and you know what? I got a feeling these things are going to be a big hit because I know I fumbled personally with all of my my paddles and canoe gear. For tonight's swag giveaway, we do have a question, and we have mentioned this a couple of times. What you need to do is please do not put your answer in the chat. Please do send it to me at coasprize@gmail.com. That's going across the ticker on the bottom. And tonight's question is, when does Tripping on the French River air on TVO? When is it being launched? When is the premiere? Just shoot me the date, and if you have the correct answer, you will be in for the draw. I will do the drawing on Saturday or probably Sunday morning. I'll notify the winner. And like I said, you're going to be getting the Portage Pal and also a Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show prize package. So with that being said there, make sure you do get your answers in to me. I see Mitch is putting another log on the fire, and he's just headed back now. So we will get him back up here on screen. And yeah, you know what? Mitch actually has a fireplace behind him. You can see he's got the fire going there. That's not a green screen.
I wonder if you could. I don't know if you can see the lake. Let's see. We'll see. See the lake.
You got a nice fire going. I'll say that much. Here, let's see what you got here for review.
It's a little blown out. Yeah, you can kind of see it.
You said you're on a lake in the Laurentians?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's hard to see, but anyway, I was putting another log on the fire.
When you first popped into the green room today, I thought you had a green screen behind you, and then you went back there and you shuffled around the logs in the fireplace. I go, oh crap, this is live.
Well, I pulled the last one on Kevin, right? Because he said, it's a fireside chat, and I was in Ottawa at that point, and I thought, well, how am I going to do a fireside chat without access to a fire? So I found this crazy lodge. I guess it's like footage on YouTube, and I popped it in behind me. I still think he thinks I was at some beautiful lodge.
Yeah, right.
He said to me today, "What lodge was that you were at? It looked beautiful." I said, "No, I was in my office."
That's funny. Excuse me. Okay, so we got a lot more things. I have been marking some questions in the chat tonight. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the chat at all. A lot of people will put questions in, and I figured I would pop a few of them up. Let's see here. Christian Miloshchuk. I call him Santa Miloshchuk. He just bought 10 gift memberships for the viewers, so that's he's always very generous in that way. Excuse me, my goodness. What park or river trip had the most memorable impact on you during your series over the years?
Wow, you know what? I love that question. Can I tell two? Okay, I'm going to tell two. Because the first one for me, I was saying this to somebody recently, like if you were going to do one river in all of Canada that encompasses every element that Canada has to offer, and we've been on, now over 40 rivers filming. The Tatshenshini, to me, was the one river that I thought it's got terrific fast water. It's got canyons. It's got big open water. It's got glaciers. It's got icebergs. It's got wildlife, like crazy, great wildlife. It's got, isolation. It's, I just thought that this is everything, every part of natural history of Canada that you can find is on one river. That to me was the greatest river. The most chilling place I'd ever been to was we went up to Ellesmere Island, and we were on Fort Conger, and Fort Conger is just above Ellesmere and off the side. And Robert Peary, well, first, I don't know if you know the Greeley story, where
No.
it sets up Fort Conger. So the Americans, Canadians and Americans were trying to fight for, who sort of owned that, the passage, and who had the rights to the north. And they sent this guy Adolphus Greeley, who was he was a U.S. naval captain, I believe he was a captain. They sent him up there to establish a fort, so that the Americans could put their flag in the ground. And anyway, it was a harrowing experience. They built this big, huge Southern style structure that really wasn't right for survival up there. The supply boat didn't come after 3 years. He decided to take his men and go south to the meeting point. Things went horrible. Lots of death and cannibalization and so forth. Anyway, long story short, the structure's left there. Peary's trying to get to the North Pole, and he is this great combination of a military guy, but also a guy that truly, respects and understands the indigenous people and their way of doing things. And he rebuilds Fort Conger, takes this big building and turns it into a lot of small, low-lying structures that have an entrance into the ground and come up into it. And he, goes off. You can argue if he did or didn't get to the pole. I think he did, but lots of folks don't think he did. But Fort Conger is now a National Historic Site. It's a Canadian site. It's a National Historic Site. It's got the same protection as the Parliament buildings or any other National Historic Site. And it was left the way that Peary left it the day he pushed off to the North Pole. So there's tables still set. There's tableware. There's, everything. The beds are, still there. Everything is as if they just got up and left for the day. It is, and it's nobody gets to you. Nobody can get there. It's so chilling. So that was the most memorable place for me. And as I was telling you before, I read so much before I go somewhere. So I knew, so much about, Peary, and I knew so much about Greeley that to actually, touch and see the place that these guys were was just chilling for me.
That's really interesting, because you obviously have a passion for this type of thing. Like, if you're with the series that you've done, like why in particular did you choose to do the outdoorsy type of documentaries?
Well, it was always an interest. I was telling you that I sort of grew up at this, sort of hunting and fishing clubs. I always loved being in the outdoors, and I still, I'm here now. I truly love it. It was just fortunate, right? I mean, everybody wants to, get a crack at doing a series that takes you outdoors. John Morrison and I, the director, we keep talking about how lucky we are to be doing these. I mean, like somebody said that, any day out in nature isn't deducted from your life, right? Like, it feels like we're going to live forever because we're always, out in the door. And then I mean, this is how we make our living too, which is kind of cool, right? Like, it's one thing to, I would do it anyway, but then to make a living at it's really cool. And of course, there's, there's stressful moments where things aren't working or so forth. But, the office is generally a pretty good place to be.
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a couple more questions here, actually. Nancy W. asked, did you camp overnight along the river, or did you have other accommodations? Did you spend any nights on the river?
Well, no, we were in lodges the entire time, because the challenge for us is power, right? We have to go back, and we did so many true wilderness rivers and parks in the day where we were bringing in generators and we were spending many like weeks and weeks out in isolated places. But on this trip, again, because we're our budgets are fairly fairly low, not fairly low, but they are what they are. They're on an educational channel. We had to have access to power. We had to be able to take all of our footage and put it over to Drive so that it was properly stored. So we stayed at lodges, and every lodge had its own its own charms. And it's also nice to help the economy a little bit too, right? I mean, that we were paying to stay at lodges and hiring local people to take us out on the water and that kind of thing, and that's a nice feeling too.
Mm-hmm. This is one I actually seen you answer on Kevin's chat the other day, but we'll get it out there anyways. What's the next project that you're contemplating? Looking forward to the next tripping from the couch.
I love that reference to tripping and couches, right? I just think that's like, you know what? I'm just right now. We're just trying to, get this, to air, and we've got a few things, but we're independent producers, right? We can only hope that TVO has their budget remains, and that they don't that they have enough dough to kind of bring us back for another season. But so I don't know what our next one's going to be, and it's going to be something that we haven't done before, right? So we've done a paddle, we've flown like a red-tailed hawk, we've been in an old mahogany boat. We've been in a sailboat and then dove down on wrecks. So it's going to be something that we have, and we, of course, you said you love the train, right? Yeah. So
train. Yeah. Like I say, one of my personal favorites. I like the trip in the Niagara River too, because it's like my back door, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Right. You captured so many things on that there that even being a local here that I just didn't know about, right? Especially some of the history. That's
a cool one. When somebody is from an area that we've filmed at, and they say they watched it and found out something they didn't know, I thought, okay, well, we must have done something right. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah. So yeah, your researchers are doing. Who would you say your name was? She's doing a great job for you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Let's see here. Richard West is asking how much editing was required. Was there a focus on anything? World War history and continuity?
Yeah, and you would think that this, because it's a linear trip, right? How hard can it be to edit, right? Like you just put the first shot, the second shot, and you put them all. And in that way, absolutely, it's easy to do in a rough cut. So the rough cut takes you 2 days to do, but what you then have to do, it's like cooking a meal, right? You have to, all of those ingredients have to be sequenced in a way, and you talked about it earlier, that once we get you watching, how do we keep you watching? I don't think we're going to get anybody in there for 3 hours, but let's get them to hang in as long as we can. And the best way to do is we have to just keep watching. Okay, now's the time we can make an edit, or now's the time we can put in an information board. So there's a lot of that kind of pacing stuff that takes a really long time, because as we talked about earlier, to start to screen something, we have to go back 15 minutes to just get a feel for when the next cut comes, and when the next element comes, when the next ingredient gets added to the program.
Mm-hmm. Now you have a lot of computer generated animations in this. In all the episodes that I've seen, really, stemming back to like tripping train 185, when you take people inside of the school train car, right?
Right. Yeah.
And a bunch of other things, and you work some of that into this particular one. Any that you care to share, or do people just have to wait and watch? Because it's really cool. I think it is. Yeah,
and we're really proud of those, because we try and make them seamless too, so that you're in the scene. The next thing you know, something is going on that you're thinking, well, that is that sort of for real. One of my favorite ones is the animator Mark Alberts recreates, and this takes so much time. Like you were talking about that train where we built the old school train, and that it took an animator a month to build that train, because it had to be exactly what the train was. There's no model for it, so they had to build it. So he did one on this trip where the French village was the logging town that started off as a single mill, then a second mill, and before you knew it, when logging was booming there were 1,500 people living in this village, and he recreated the village. And the village had some really unique features, because it was all on the shield and it was sort of bouncy and so forth. They had to build a sort of not walkway, but a way for either the horse, trolleys to get, the wood from usually from the water up until the mill and then back down into the ship. So they had to build this massive wooden, boardwalk. They had to build these huge, big, furnaces to burn all the shavings and stuff. So he had to build this from scratch. He literally went in there, and it's really neat because at one point you're just floating along and you sort of look to the left, and what looks like, because the forest has come back and reclaimed this town, he takes the forest down and puts the town back in, which is kind of cool to see.
Yeah, that's some amazing work that he did there, like I say, and it was like that in all of your tripping episodes. That it takes you back in history. It gives you factual things about the area that you're exploring.
Yeah,
it covers a lot. It kind of brings you back in time, especially those historical ones, right?
I was really proud of the ones that we did in the Bruce Peninsula, because the Bruce Peninsula was, it's infamous for its shipwrecks because of, all the shoals that are up there. And I think they said there's 10,000 shipwrecks in the Great Lakes, and vast majority are in that area. And, they were always in November because, they were making their last run because the owners were saying, you guys can get one last run. And they're going, I don't know, and that's usually when they piled into something because weather came up, right? And their navigation system was basic, but what we would do is we'd have you going along, and then all of a sudden you'd see the storm come at you as the viewer, and the storm would like overtake you. And then you now all of a sudden you're on this freighter, and the freighter is battling the waves, and it it strikes something, and it sinks, and then we go underwater, and then from that animated shot you're now seeing the wreck, and we had to shoot those in one continuous 10-minute shot, going from the stern around the bow and all the way back down, and then come back up to to the sailboat POV, and those were like the detail. Every ship we had to have modeled, and those were I think some of our finest, some of the animators' finest work.
Sure. And as smoothly as you transition in, you transition back out again, and the journey just continues on, right?
Yeah. That's it works. That's what it does.
I'm just curious. I'm going to ask everybody in the chat here, if you've seen any of the tripping episodes, put a number 1 in the chat. I'm just curious to see how many people have seen your work. We'll find out here in a quick moment.
Yeah. Well, there's 5, right? As you said, the Rito, the Niagara, working with a red-tailed hawk and trying to get viewers to believe that they were a hawk flying, because all of us, I think everybody's dreamt of flying, right? So, and working with a hawk actor, that was really tough. She was a particularly grumpy.
You were saying that, yeah.
Oh, she was, yeah, and and food motivated, right? So you shoot a scene, and you need to replenish her her intake, and then if you feed her just slightly too much and she doesn't want food anymore, then that's it. She goes back to the hotel room and comes out the next day.
I wonder if that's the same red-tailed hawk that I seen at a outdoors show this past spring.
Yeah, it could be.
Or fall, past fall.
Bring her into the hotel was something, right? Because we had to get permission from the hotel to have her come in, and surprisingly they were cool about it, right? Like like to think that you're bringing a raptor into a room, and is she really going to stay in in her in her own little boudoir, or is she going to get out in the room? And like, I don't know. I was really surprised the hotels were okay with that.
they probably never experienced that before, so they didn't know what to make of it, right? So I guess, go ahead.
Yeah. It's good till it's bad, right?
No entrails in the room, please. I'm seeing an awful lot of ones in the chat there, Mitch.
Oh,
so
look, I see
the
chat now. That's cool.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Let's see here. Evan Lefebvre is asking, what kind of safety procedures did you have to take for this one?
we were always with someone, you know, that worked on the river, like a guide on the river. And, you know, we all followed, you know, all safety regulations. And, you know, the only parts that had any sense that, you know, something could go wrong was when we were doing any of the moving water. And, you know, and that's when we had Richard. And as you know, because you know Richard well, we were there wasn't a moment of concern for us. You know, we knew he had gone, he had scouted, he understood what he had to do. He understood, you know, where, you know, the weight that, you know, the camera person was, you know, so he had it all kind of under control. So I was never, I never felt for the safety of the crew. And and we've been, you know, because of some of these other, you know, more wilderness trips we've been on, I have felt that for the crew, you know, and wondered. I mean, we had a grizzly, you know, multiple times grizzly bears, you know, approach camp, and, you know, and those are concerning moments, right? I mean, for the bear and for us.
Mm-hmm. Did you encounter any good wildlife? Have any good wildlife encounters besides the beavers?
The thing that surprised me was how many bald eagles were up there. There was not a day that we didn't see multiple bald eagles, and that came as a shock. And I know they're moving further south, but I guess, you know, the fishermen say it's good fishing, so I guess the eagles, you know, believe that too, because that was one of the surprises for me on that river, especially with the amount of, you know, human, you know, sort of activity there too.
Yeah, you know, it's so nice that they are making such a resurgence as they are, because they're even down here in Niagara now. Rockaway, I've seen them down in the Niagara River Valley, you know, or Gorge. They're making a real good comeback. Best thing they did was get rid of that, what was it, DDT or something that was affecting their eggs, right?
Yeah,
putting them in there.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, I saw one in 2 winters ago. I saw one in High Park in Toronto, and I stopped and stared at it. And anybody that went by said, you really should just look up and see this animal, because, you know, this might be a once in a lifetime opportunity, you know, to see one in a city park, you know.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. Did you want to chat a bit about some of the other documentaries that you did, or would you rather keep the focus on
No, let's yeah, I'd love to talk about I mean, any of the parks, the rivers. We did a history series about the other episodes, anything at all. I love talking about this stuff.
Well, let me ask you this: which one are you most keen on?
I
know they're all your baby, but there's, you know, that golden child, right?
Yeah. Oh wow. That's a tough question, you know, and
that's a question Kevin would throw at you. And
yeah,
by the way,
I love the Firth River. You know, that was an amazing, you know, river. It just felt like, you know, I remember when we put in at the top, we were flying in and we crossed the dew line. And I remember seeing all of what makes up the dew line, you know, those massive, I don't know what they're called, but they look like a giant golf ball. And, you know, and they're connected to all these buildings. And I thought, we are in the middle of nowhere. You know, there's no human activity for, you know, 500 miles or 800 kilometers. And yet, you know, you look all around, there's nothing except these big structures. And, you know, I mean, I know they've gone in and cleaned them up a lot, but I thought the Firth River was one of the, you know, one of the great rivers. You know, one of the things, and it sounds really, really approachable, but we did an hour on Banff National Park, and you would think, yeah, Banff National Park, everybody's overrun, right? There's tons of, but we got into the backcountry there with wardens that really, you know, knew their way around. And we had an aha moment out there, because we were out in the backcountry. We were aiming to get to somewhere, and on the way to where we were going, we uncovered a backcountry hut that had been built. He figured, you know, because we literally stumbled, they didn't even know it existed. It was probably from like the 1820s or something. And it turned out it was one of the sort of infamous characters that had been a warden there at that time, because that's Canada's first national park. And that was really cool to find something, just by complete, happenstance, that is probably now going to be, designated some kind of national historic site, and being able to be the first people on it, and to look in and see the, to see the stove, and to see the, the bunk bed, and that was kind of a cool moment. And that was in the middle of, like, arguably one of our busiest national parks.
Mm-hmm. So you've actually shot at a lot of different locations. What's been the most challenging video production that you actually put together?
I think, and I keep coming back to Ellesmere. Ellesmere was challenging because it's so far, right? I mean, it's from Ottawa to Ellesmere is the same distance as from Ottawa to Cuba. If you were to go straight down south, right? I mean, it's way, way up there. And it required a 4-hour flight up to, I think, Grise Fjord, and then from Grise Fjord another 3.5-hour charter up to the park. And then when we got there, the warden said to us, he said, "This is the kind of come to moment, because a lot of people, when they get off the plane here and the plane turns around and leaves," he said, "people have had breakdowns because they realize," and I'd never even thought about this. I never ever, maybe because I didn't have any health issues, I never thought about it. But he said people would break down because they'd realize that if something happened to them, there was no, like, we're on the dark side of the moon. Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to take a while for a rescue. So if you had a heart, health issue, you were in big trouble. And I never even thought about that. And every day we would go out for a hike. And every day you knew you were putting your foot down. And I mean this from glaciation afterwards, for 10,000 years. You knew you were putting your foot down on a place that no one else had ever put their foot down. And you're probably seeing a vista that nobody had ever seen. And you were literally, there wasn't a day that didn't go by that we didn't find some kind of prehistoric site, that we just uncovered a site that, that people, had, like, it would have been a stone structure. Or at one point we found this circle of stones that was like 0.5 kilometer, like a Stonehenge kind of thing. And it was all stuff we had some scientists with us, and they were like, they just couldn't, like, every single day there was a discovery up there. And it was only because nobody's up there. Right.
Right.
But that to me was, that's, I think about that, but I think of the challenges of that, of how we had to prepare to be up there and know that, we were not on our own, because we had, we had the support of the wardens, but little else.
Mm-hmm. Are all these available on the YouTube platform here, or are they just available through your TVO, your website? What's the best way to find these things?
Yeah, so we had them up for a while, and then they got taken down. They were up on Amazon in Canada and in the US, and they got taken down. I've been actually thinking about how we can kind of get them back up, because even though they're older programs and they were shot in 4:3 and standard definition, there's something there's something nostalgic about them too, right? And they're evergreen, right? And we'd like to find a way to get them back up there, because we did 70 parks, we did 65 national historic sites, we did I think 30 rivers, we did 10 lakes. So there's a lot of maybe I should just do a YouTube Canada channel or something.
You should. I think you should. I bet you if I asked for more ones over there in the chat, that would happen.
All right, we're on to something here, Dennis.
There we go. Let's see. We got a guest in the basement here, and he actually posted a question. I'm going to let him ask the question personally. Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Mitch.
Long time no see, right, Kevin?
That's funny. I was like, hey, Mitch is on tonight. I gotta watch this. He's a good guy.
Okay, I'm going to post a question on the screen, Kevin, and you can actually ask the question.
Oh, I forgot the question I asked.
Oh,
All right. Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't ask you that when I was doing the interview with you, and because we ran out of time. But the most intriguing person you met along the French during the process?
Wow. That's a, that's a really, that's a good question. I love the family at Bears Den. I mean, I thought those guys, because they were, we talked about it, Kevin, when I was chatting with you about, they were such great stewards of the river. And I think I told you the story about, we're standing, and they really understand the history and appreciate the history, and they do all kinds of work for conservation. And we were talking, Dennis and I, about the old logging town, and I was asking about the logging town. They said, "Oh yeah, we got this great historian. We'll bring him in, and he'll tell you the whole story." And they said, "And by the way, you're standing on on a part of the old French village." And we said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Yeah, we got these beams from the village when not we did, but the original lodge owners got them to build the lodge on." And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. That's really, really cool. There was another guy called Pierre Blais. He was a great guide. He got us. He grew up on the lower part of the river. I've got some cool footage. So he would get us to the top, and then we would get down to the bottom, and then he would come around from another channel and pick us up. And he would take us in this kind of John boat, jet boat, back up to our starting point. And he said that he used to do it as a kid in an outboard in the middle of the night. And I'm talking, if I've showed you the footage of what he took us through, it was ridiculous, like tight little spots with fast water coming down. And he's doing it like this, talking to us while he's going through it. So he was an intriguing and frightening character.
That's it's kind of cool that you meet all those people. For the people that are out there that don't know Mitch, you should. But if you don't know, and I don't say this off the cuff at all. When I say this, I'm very serious. Mitch is a legend. A lot of seriously, like a lot of people say, well, he's a legend. He's a legend. He's a legend. I'm old enough to know that you survived TV. Right? You actually got through it and created some amazing footage from all those rivers and parks and stuff like that. You were, and your crew were amazing, right? And so anybody that's out there, who is this guy? Who's this guy? Why are we doing this? Freaking awesome, right there.
All right.
Okay, but here's the big question that I really wanted to ask you, probably not on air. Yeah. But probably maybe having a chat. But I really want to ask you this question. So if you survived that, if you went through, TV was the thing, and you survived it, and then you went and did all those series that actually I remember watching, a lot of people watching. But then you're now doing, the TVO thing, and now is it? So people would say, well, what one person said, I don't think they meant it in a negative way. Well, let's say they meant it in a negative way. Let's just pretend they did. Did you sleep on the trip? Did you canoe the trip? And were you like a YouTuber doing this trip with your drones and your GoPros, whatever? No, you had a massive camera. And if they have never been on a film shoot like that, I know it's impossible for you to actually do a physical trip doing that, because your job is to capture that imagery that we want to imagine us in. Yeah. But are you worried about criticism that people would say, well, you really didn't do the trip?
Yeah. And the answer is no. And I'll tell you why. And Dennis and I were talking about this when we did the parks and the rivers and those series. I mean, we were out there, and we were in tents, and we were doing, but those were traditional, documentaries, right? Where we had to get this scene and this scene and this scene. And then those, 12 different scenes would make the half-hour program. On this one, our job is to allow the viewer to be experience the river as if they were in the canoe, and that it has to be one sort of continuous journey. We're not trying to, pretend for a moment that, that we're out there and we're camping, and we don't show show us, setting up and camping. We don't show us getting into the canoe. We don't show us getting out of. Like this is an experiential trip. It's tripping, right? It's meant to, allow the viewer to just be on the water in a continuous shot. And that's part of the reason why it's done in a day, right? I mean, no one today would ever do the French River in a day. We talked about how the voyageurs would have done it in a day. I mean, this is a 3, 4, make it up 5, 6 day trip that we're trying to, compact into 3 hours. So it's a documentary because we're going to give you lots of great information about the river. We're going to take you, with 3D animation to, parts of its history, but it's by no means a documentary that, is a person's journey down this river and all of the, the hardships and difficulties and parts of a traditional trip down a river like that.
So does it burst your blood vessels when people would say, well, you didn't do it though?
Not at all. I mean, if TVO said, I want you and, and Kevin, or you and Dennis, or you and Richard Tosh to go and experience this river, and you're going to shoot them going down this river, and that what you're filming is their experience on the river. Hey, we're all going to stay out, so we're all going to camp out at night. We're all going to wake up. We're all going to, be part of that fire, and I'm going to capture your experience going down. That's a very different film. That's a very traditional film. Love to do it, but that's not what I'm doing this time. I did that, over 100 times with, the River and Park series, but that's not this one. And I'm proud of what we're doing. It's just a different style of programming.
Yeah, well, you're professional, right? So now I'll ask one more question. I'll let Dennis go here with it. So was there a time when you were working on this film, and because I helped you about where to go, where to film, whatever, and of course I'm hyper. I don't know how many Zooms we did, and you're like, oh, this guy's whacked. Was there a moment where you and your crew said Kevin has no clue what he's talking about?
That the first day out there, I was telling Dennis, the first day out there, I was cursing. I didn't tell you this the other day. I was cursing you because we went up the main channel from at the top towards Canoe Pass, but we were in the main channel, and I was looking at this and I was thinking, there's no way the shoot's like, it would be, as you said, a good traditional program. But for what we're doing is we need sort of tightish channels. We need, nice flat water. We need everything to be, perfectly lit. And as we were going up, and I still remember that, you can ask John about it. I said, what the heck did Kevin get us into? There's no way this river shoots, right? And anyway, we got to some of the back channels, and and it was wonderful. But yeah, there was a moment.
Well, because a lot of the Upper French looks like just a big lake.
That's what it feels like.
And remember the conversations we had, which was all math, and I'm terrible with math. You try to figure out, okay, so we're in a boat, but we're supposed to be in a canoe.
Yeah.
And how fast can the canoe go, and how fast the boat could go? And you're on Zoom with me. I went, I have no clue. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And did you figure that out?
We did figure it out. Yeah. We paced it out. Right. And so I always have my speedometer app, right. So that, that we can get the, the speed proper. Right. Cause
he's serious. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, and but you also feel it too, right? And we shot at at a frame rate where we could slightly speed or slow down the film without it looking like it had been adjusted, right? Because we need it to be a true paddling speed, but we also know that at times because of current or whatever the conditions are, you're going faster than other times. So, the speed gets adjusted, but we were always hyper aware of, the range in which you can be going.
Well, it was also too, like a year before that, you contacted me about a route, and you wanted to do the Spanish,
yeah,
which ended up to be the train travel, which actually was amazing.
Okay.
But I remember saying, I looked at the gear you had. I went, you cannot do the Spanish with that gear. No, there's no way. Like you'll still be there portaging right now to this day.
they would find us up there now, right?
Oh man,
those guys.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm so looking forward to it. I'm so glad Tosh got involved, and I'm so glad that you had this canoe people in the canoe that no one really knew, but they do know, because actually that Bill Mason, when he did Water Walker, he was at college years ago where I teach, and his big thing was they don't really care who I am, they just want to be me in the canoe. And
that's it. That's exactly what we're trying to do, right? That's exactly what we're trying to do. But let me. It sounds like you're about to dash off. So let me ask you, what's the most intriguing person, place, story that you've had on the water?
On the water, or the you're good.
Well, you got me. And Dennis,
don't answer what I think you're going to answer, Kevin.
And it's a family show. It's a family show, Kevin.
No, I'll tell you one that I've never told before. I've never told this story before in my life, actually.
All right.
I'll tell you a totally different one. So I went to do a solo trip on the biscuit tasting, was writing a guidebook and a whole biscuit tasting area. Yeah. And a couple of days before that, I was doing some presentation that was like, why did I get myself involved? It was from I was the keynote speaker at some company that raised money for people. I don't know. It was, I don't know. What are they called when you go and get people to make money for you?
Like a fundraiser?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't like a good fundraiser feeling. It was anyway, it was a business thing.
Okay.
And I got paid $75 to speak. Hurrah! Yeah. And I then they asked me where I was going. I said, well, I'm going to biscuit tasting tomorrow or next day, whatever. And the keynote speaker before me was he was a magician. Anyway, weird life. But he met me in the parking lot and he grabbed my shoulder like this. And he goes, if you go to my effing lake and my effing route, I will kill you. Are we clear on this? I went, whoa, buddy. And I don't even know who the guy was. I went, okay, this is getting interesting. So I still went on the trip. 2 days into the trip, I get windbound. I go to this remote cabin, and they look like hermits, but they're not. But they're very old people. They look like they're about to die. And they invited me in for tea, and they're his parents.
Come on.
Oh, really?
And they love me to bits. And I didn't say that I knew their son that almost wanted to kill me in the parking lot. And I stayed there the night. I actually slept in their cabin, and they love me to bits. And then on the way back, I visited them for tea again. And the tea actually tasted like your armpit juice. Like it was disgusting tea. And
tasted armpit juice. I got to take your word for that.
Oh yeah, no, but they were lovely people. But I'm thinking, so I didn't say anything to them about their son protecting his effing lake, and I wrote that route up in my book. I never told the story about those people.
That's a good one. What about you, Dennis? You got to have some good ones.
You know what? So, some of my most intriguing things that I've done in the backcountry or come across would be in way of people would be some of the experiences, like the time we were camped on an island up in Mizanabi. This airplane comes circling around the island, right? And we thought maybe we were camped on an outfitters. It looked like some place where they would drop people off because there was the apparatus that they tie the plane off to. Plane flew around, landed on the lake, come coasting over to us, and a couple of guys get out, and they just happened to be, one was the Dr. Broomhead, actually, from the town of Chapleau, and his son, and they were going fishing on the lake. So they dug into the bushes, pulled out a boat, a motor, fuel, went out fishing, come back, and we struck up a conversation with them. And Kevin, you've met my good friend Jay, my regular canoe partner. Well, the son, his brother and Jay played hockey together, right? So that struck up an instant friendship. When Dad and the son were getting ready to take off, as a joke, I said, hey, guys, any chance we get you to fly us in some beer? And the son says, well, you never know. I might be back tomorrow, because we were planning a layover day. Next day, sure enough, fly over the lake, right? Plane lands, comes taxiing up. the son gets out. He's got his girlfriend or his wife with him this time. And he's standing on the pontoon of the boat, and he reaches in, pulls out grocery bag, grocery bag, grocery bag, cooler. And we're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here, right? The son says, I can't remember his name, but he says, we brought you beer, he says, but Mom thought you guys might be hungry too. 2 roasted chickens, bag of cooked roasted potatoes, can of corn, and a Sara Lee cake. Remember those Sara Lee cakes?
Oh, yeah. I like
it's tough in the wilderness. It's tough out there.
Well, you know what? And that's we were like 3 days in. We were in the middle of nowhere. I think we were on Agnew Lake. Is it Agnew or Abbey Lake? One of the two. But yeah, so like you don't know who you're going to meet in the backcountry or what kind of an experience you're going to have. But everyone I've ever had has been not people trying to kill me for paddling their canoe route. So,
no, the guy that wanted to kill me was in the city. The people in the wilderness wanted to me to live there with them.
Why don't we got somebody in the basement here. Why don't we ask him the same question? Let's bring Tosh up on stage.
There he is. Oh
like
my
reunion here going on, right?
Look at the muscles, the pecs coming out of him. Look at the pecs coming out of him.
Yeah, he's got his tripping hat on.
Still tripping.
Oh yeah, that's great.
You're on mute there, Tosh.
Oh, he's muted.
He's on mute. Let me talk for him then. Well, guys, I'm so macho. I spit in the ground before I paddle. Yeah, I curse and I swear in Canadian.
Yeah, Tosh, hit your mute button, buddy.
Yeah, I can see that he is muted. That must be his van that he's in, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it not unmuting for you?
There he goes. There he goes. Yeah.
There we go. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Just got back from a little canoe trip, actually.
Cool. Very good. Very good.
Where'd you go?
So we got did you catch that question that's been going around?
Hit me with it again.
Do you have syphilis?
They do. No, most intriguing person that you may have met in the backcountry or experience.
It was on the way back from a backcountry trip, actually. So I did a 28-day solo trip when I was 21 and ended up on the French River, actually, and left all my gear by the highway, stored it at the marina, and then decided I was going to hitchhike to my grandma's house in Sudbury. And I left at around 4 o'clock in the evening, and I had been in the bush for 28 days. I smelled terrible. I looked terrible. I was 21. I had a month of scruffy, ugly beard on my face. And anyways, I couldn't get a ride. Actually, my uncle passed me he was trucking. He drove past me and didn't recognize me, didn't stop to pick me up. And then I got picked up in the dark about 11 o'clock at night by a woman with a screaming baby in the back of her car. And she said I looked like I was stranded. And so this random woman stopped. She's got an infant in the back crying his eyes out. And as we're driving to Sudbury, she decides to ask me to take the wheel while she gets the baby out of the back of the car and then proceeds to nurse the baby while driving. And then, now granted, she put the window down before I got in the car and she asked me if I wouldn't hurt her or her baby. I was just looking for a ride. She wanted to clarify that.
Wow.
And then after she had nursed the baby, she turned and handed me her son and asked if I could burp him because she was driving.
Okay, you win. You win. That's better than mine.
I vote for Richard.
Yeah. No. Oh my Lord.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you, Tosh. You obviously had some really cool dealings going on here with Mitch there being the pilot of a canoe going through the white waters of the French River. What was the experience like, and what was it like being really behind the camera, right?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I just did what I always do and jumped in the canoe and got to paddle down through some of the prettiest stretches of the river, I think. Whether it's upstream through, you know, Blue Chute in that area, which is spectacular, or the old Voyageur channel. And like I was just listening to the chat and people talking about, you know, oh, was this an actual canoe trip, and were we camping on the river and that kind of thing. And I don't think, it's hard to grasp the size of the equipment. I mean, the camera with the rig that Peter was holding as we were going down the Voyageur channel, it's wired in with a 2 terabyte hard drive, and he would get maybe 20 minutes of footage into 2 terabytes. And then we'd have to stop and put the next card in to finish out the run. And then that was it. Like that, this was just $20,000 of equipment. And we're, you know, he's just sitting there trying to focus on the camera. And I'm just hoping more than anything that I don't screw this up and put us all in the drink. But yeah, it was so much fun. And then I found it, you know, just a joy to like learn from these guys, like just talking with Mitch and with the producer, John, and Peter was just a wealth of information about everything. The guys filmed from one end of Canada to the other in every environment you could imagine. But yeah, it was so much fun.
And not really, not really a talkative fellow, is he, Peter?
Yeah, well, he makes up for the lack of talking that I was doing.
Yeah, between the two of you, it equals 1.
Yeah.
So how many days were you on the shoot, Tosh?
We did 3 days, I think. I was there for the lower.
Yeah. And
then was it 3 more for the? I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I kind of lost track too. It was.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 and 3, but we finished a day early on the upper with the weather worked out, and everything kind of came together. Yeah.
And it's funny, didn't you get the sense, like, I remember that the first scene you shot when you guys went down the old Voyageur, I was telling these guys, and you came, and both you and Peter knew you got good stuff, right? Like, it was like you both came back with like a great feeling. And you get this in your filmmaking, you know, when you've got it, you know, when you've got it, right? Like when something really went well.
Yeah, and there's a couple scenes when I watch the video now where, especially in the old Voyageur channel, where you were talking about earlier, that sloped rock that comes right down and you can practically touch both shorelines. And as Peter and I were going down, he's just focusing on the rock as he's panning along, and we come around a slight bend and the breeze is blowing towards us, and there happens to be a beaver that's sitting on some rocks, like cleaning its fur. And I'm trying not to talk a whole lot and let Peter do his thing. And I'm like, Peter, 11 o'clock, there's a beaver. and Peter takes his eye off the camera briefly. I see his head move, but he can't just swing over to it. So he's got to slowly pan across to maintain the shot, hoping to get this beaver into it. And then, like just as he gets over to it, we were like maybe 2 canoe lengths away from it by that point. And it looks up and saw us and then dives into the water.
And that's so much feel too. And it's funny that you said that, because that's what Peter, you know, I was trying to explain about being immersive. Like, Peter's literally, you know, working the camera as if, you know, your head would change, you know, would turn naturally. If you were in the bow, that's what you would be doing, right? And there can't be any of that sort of fast motion, right? Everything has to have that sort of, you know, smooth feel, because that's what keeps you in the trance. And, you know, hopefully for, you know, not 3 hours, but for, you know, for some portion of the program.
Yeah. The thing I like about the video too is it's putting people that wouldn't be able to do the French River on the French River, right? As you mentioned, it's the immersion into the atmosphere, into the nature and the beauty and the history of an area that people wouldn't be able to do. Like, I've hiked portions of the Bruce Trail, but the Bruce Trail, you cover so much of it that, you know, it immerses you in that atmosphere, right?
I think that's part of it, right? Is that it's I mean, you know, we talked about the first one, the Rito, happening during the pandemic, and then, you know, and that, you know, we had a captive audience. But after that, it's allowing, you know, it's allowing Canadians, particularly Southern Ontarians, to see parts of, you know, Ontario. And we talked about this too, Kevin, that they wouldn't maybe, you know, get a chance to do that. And it might inspire them to get out there, right? Which is even cooler.
It's so funny though, Mitch, because I wrote an Explore blog on that, and I said that exact statement. However, I also added something, and I said, or it's for someone that's cleaning the house or doing some cooking, and they just wanted something in the background, or they just smoke drugs.
That's where the tripping part comes in.
Yeah, and the editor said, Kevin, that's really funny, but I think we should just take that section out.
I'm going to pull up one more question here, Mitch, before we conclude tonight's episode here, and it's from Untamed Ontario. And this guy always has the best questions. But how much of any of the audio recorded on location?
That's a great question, because we when we're in the canoe. So what we did was we went back and brought an audio guy up, and he did, you know, parts of the river, just sitting in the bow of the canoe with his audio gear, because it's really hard for us to. We could get rudimentary audio with the gear that we had, but you really have to have a proper, you know, audio person. So the audio is from the river, but it's being put onto. It was taken after the, you know, the scenes. We went and just, you know, rolled on audio and no video.
Was that the case with the conversation too? The bits of conversation?
No, we had mics on the two paddlers almost the entire time. So those were, you know, were conversations they were having. But it's funny, you know, because it's challenging sometimes, because, you know, when we did the Rideau Canal, you know, we're in a motorboat, and, you know, the motor's running the entire time. Like, you know, to isolate, you know, conversations, or to isolate bird sounds, or to isolate water sounds is challenging. So we always do a post audio run to get all of and we do it, you know, in an electric boat or in a canoe or in some kind of silent craft that, you know, we can have pure audio.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And one final question for me: what are the plans for your premiere or your viewing party? Is there something going on, or is it a relaxing night at home with a glass of wine?
You know what? And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I never believe that people are going to watch the program, and I never believe that any of these are any good. I just don't. And I'm so nervous when it goes to air. My family will be sitting there watching it, and I'll be pacing around thinking, oh, we should have done, oh, that was terrible. Oh, why did we, you know, all I see is so, like, when we have these kind of conversations, it's really nice to hear, you know, what you were saying, Dennis, that you would watch some of the other programs, and I could tell you genuinely enjoyed them, because I never believe, you know, I think we all feel that, you know, sometimes that our work maybe isn't that. I'm really critical anyway. So to answer your question, I'll be pacing around somewhere. Yeah, so
it's no champagne bubbly pops and stuff like that.
No. I wish I could tell you a different story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this is really where I am. Unlike when I talked to you. Remember when I put in that 3D video.
Your fire's gone out though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Fire's gone.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Just like your TV show, it's gone to hell.
You can warm that up in a minute. So tell people when the premiere is happening on TVO, and then where can people watch it after the fact if they don't have access to TVO?
Yeah, so it's TVO at 8 o'clock this coming Sunday, the 21st, and then as soon as it finishes, I think they repeat it again, but it immediately drops onto their YouTube channel. So I don't know the TVO address, but I imagine it's TVO's YouTube channel, easy to find. And what's going to be, I'm really hoping that it comes out in 4K. I know it will eventually, but I hope when they put it on, the moment the program ends, it's in 4K, because it really makes a difference, right? Because there's a lot of great detail. So I know, you know, the difference between SD and HD was massive, and 4K is not that huge a step. But for natural history, it's pretty cool.
For sure. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight and telling us about this. I'm
Well,
looking forward to concluding watching. Like I say,
yeah.
I went to finish watching, and my link access had been pulled. I imagine they do that just beforehand. So yeah,
Well,
for their
thanks for
reasons.
bringing these two characters up. I can't tell you how much. I mean, Richard and I, we really got along. He was such a great addition to the crew. We really had some fun, and he got us some great footage. And then Kevin inspired it. So wow, what a treat to see these two. You got me, Dennis. You got me.
You know what? Kevin's a regular on the show, and I think Tosh is trying to grab the record.
Thank God, because I've had enough being on your show, Dennis. I swear to God.
No, it's always a good time when we have these fellas on, so that's good stuff. Mitch, once again, thanks very much. Truly appreciate it. Gentlemen, stick around for the green room. We'll have a quick little chat in there afterwards. So I'm just going to drop everybody down and finish up.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, one more thing, Mitch. Where can people find more information on your business as well?
Yeah, I mean, goodearthproductions.com. And, you were saying too that there's some really nice kind of behind the scenes stuff that's on that they can link from there. Or I think TVO is putting some of it up too. But if you're on Facebook, for sure, X, right? It's X now, Instagram, all those behind the scenes stories are there. You'll get to see Tosh do his thing.
Yeah, I actually seen the back of Tosh's head on one of the scenes there. Yeah. All right, Mitch, thanks very much, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully everybody enjoyed tonight's episode of Canoehounds Outdoor Adventure Show with Mitch Azaria talking about the premiere of Tripping the French River. By all means, make sure you take in this video. It's very relaxing, very educational. It's a really, really good watch. So you'll really enjoy it. And then after you watch that, if you haven't seen his other episodes of the tripping series, I'll call it, by all means, look it up, because they are all on the TVO YouTube page. So you can find them there. Just as a reminder, next week we'll have Jim Baird on panel with us to chat about all the cool things that he's got going on, including a new beer launch by Muskoka Brewery. So I'm gonna have to try and get my hands on one of them bad boys for next week's show. That would be really cool, because Muskoka beers are some of my favorites. I like their Tread Lightly and their Detour. And also the week after that, we have the boys from Agawa Gear to talk about all the cool things that they got coming up with Agawa Gear. They're the makers of the Agawa Boreal 21, 15, and 24-inch saws, which are so popular amongst us outdoorsy people. So by all means, you'll want to tune in for them. Anyways, I hope everybody enjoyed tonight's show, and we'll see you next week. So remember, keep the adventures alive. Talk to you soon.